All right, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what to do when you're trying to factor and your a value is greater than 1. So far in class, when we've been doing this, we've been doing it when we had like an x squared plus something something, and there was no number in front of it. Remember, this number in front of it here we call a. So when that a is greater than 1, we follow a little bit of different steps. You should have a paper in front of you with these directions on them or these steps on them so you can kind of follow along as you go. I would encourage you to stop the video to make sure you have time to write down the steps. So we're going to look at the first problem of 12x squared plus 5x minus 2. The first step is we want to multiply a times c. So normally we would just take c and look for factor pairs of c that add to b. This time we're going to do a times c first, and then we'll look for our factor pairs. So a times c, as you can see right here, would be 12 times negative 2, which is negative 24. Step 2 says to look for factor pairs of AC that add to B. So we're going to start to look for factor pairs, and those are over here. So factor pairs of negative 24, negative 6 and 4, 12 and negative 2, negative 3 and 8. The one that adds to a positive 5 is negative 3 and 8. So then I'm going to move on to step 3. Step 3 says to bring down the first and the third terms. So now we're here to step 3. Bring down the first and the third term. So you can see that I've done that here in green. So I have my 12x squared I brought down, and my negative 2 I brought down. Step 4 says to list the second term, which is 5x, as a sum of your two factors. So if you recall over here, the two factors we came up with were negative 3 and 8. So I'm going to write this 5x as those two factors, negative 3x plus 8x. And the reason I included the x is because I want the sum of those when I add those to equal 5x. If I continue, I'm going to move on to group, or 5, which is group your terms into two binomials. Realistically, that just means put parentheses around them. All right, this is the part that looks very different. For step 6, it says to pull out the greatest common factor from each binomial. So I'm going to look at my first binomial here, 12x squared minus 3x. I need to think about what number can I pull out of 12x squared and negative 3x. Well, they're both divisible by 3, and they both have at least an x. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out a 3x from each of those. If we look over here, same idea. 8x minus 2, they're both divisible by 2. So in order to pull those out, I'm going to start by moving them outside of the parentheses, and then inside of the parentheses will be what I have left. So 12x squared divided by 3x is 4x. That's where this came from. Negative 3x divided by 3x is negative 1. And then move over to this one. 8x divided by 2 is 4x. And negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. When you do this step, you should hopefully notice something. What you're hopefully noticing is that the answer in your binomials here are the same. They should match. So two of your binomials should match. This is one of your binomials in your answer. The other binomial is found here on the outside. So I would write this as 4x minus 1 times 3x plus 2. So that was how you factor when x is greater than 1. Let's take a look at another one. All right, we're going to do the same process here. So we're going to start with step 1. Step 1 says to multiply a times c. So I'm going to do 3 times negative 90, which gives me negative 270. I'm going to be looking for factor pairs of negative 270 that add to negative 3. Now I know that we probably don't know factor pairs of negative 270 off the top of our head, but you can always use a calculator and do 270 and divide it by numbers until you find matches. So when you would divide 270 by a number, you're going to divide it and you're looking for when you can divide and get a whole number. Those are going to be your factor pairs. So because we're trying to get kind of a small number here in the center, I know the two numbers that I multiply have to be pretty close together. So I could kind of start going through them. Well, 270 is like 27 with a 0. So I could do 3 and 90. I could do 30 and 9. I could do 10 and 27. Or I could do 15 and 18. And 15 and negative 18 will add to that negative 3. All right, so now that I know those numbers, we go back up here and we start through our process again. Next step, drop the first and the third term. First term, third term. Next step, we are going to decide where to put this 15x and this negative 18. Now, typically when you're deciding where to place those numbers, you want to kind of think ahead to your next step. I know I'm going to have to divide something out of those numbers, so you want to make sure that the numbers you put next to each other have something that they're both divisible by. Sometimes it doesn't matter and it will work for both numbers. For example, in this problem, if I put the negative 18 here and the 15x here, I will still end up getting the same answer. So I've decided to put the 15x first because they're both divisible by 3, and then negative 18x because they're both actually divisible by 18. So I come up with the greatest common factor, which in this case is 3x and negative 18. I'm going to pull those out. So remember, you drop that number that you're pulling out to the front of the parentheses, and then I'm going to see what I get on the inside. 3x squared divided by 3x is x. 15x divided by 3x is 5. Same thing over here. Negative 18x divided by negative 18 is x. And negative 90 divided by negative 18 is 5. So my answer is going to have an x plus 5 because you'll notice they match. And then the two numbers on the outside, 3x minus 18. Remember, you can always check your answers by using Desmos. So if I put in this answer, which is my factored form of my equation, and this answer, which is the standard form of my equation, they should make the same parabola. Let's look at one more. So this will be example 3. So for example 3, same beginning steps. I'm going to do 6 times 4, which is 24. Looking for factor pairs of 24 that add to negative 11. So my initial thought is negative 6 and negative 4, but that adds to negative 10. So I got to keep trying. Negative 12 and negative 2, that'd be negative 14. We're getting closer. Negative 3 and negative 8, that will work to add to negative 11. All right, so now I come back over here. Drop the first term, drop the third term. Just bring them down. Negative 11 is going to be split into 2. Before I scroll down and reveal which side I put them on, think about where should the 3x go, where would the 8x go. So is 6 divisible by 3? Should I put that first? Are 8 and 6 divisible by the same numbers? Are 3 and 4 divisible by the same numbers? Are 8 and 4 divisible by the same numbers? So what you're hopefully realizing is it probably makes more sense to put the 3 first because the 8 is divisible by this 4. So we can try it that way. We can try it this way. You should get the same answer either way. So in this case, it looks like I decided to put the negative 8 first and then the negative 3. If I pull a 2x out of this first one and a negative 1 out here, we'll get the same thing. So 6x squared divided by 2x is 3x. Negative 8x divided by 2 is negative 4. Negative 3x divided by negative 1 is 3x. And 4 divided by negative 1 is negative 4. Finally, your 3x minus 4 would be one of them, and 2x minus 1 is the other. All right, last example. This one starts in a similar way. We're doing 3 times negative 8, negative 24. Looking for factor pairs that add to a positive 10. So 12 and negative 2 is the factor pair we want to use. In this case, I decided to put the 12 with the 3x and the negative 2 with the 8. Most of the time, it will still work if you flip them. So I'm going to pull out the 3x for the first one and a negative 2 for the second. Remember, those go in front of the parentheses, and we see what remains. on the outside. 3x squared divided by 3x is x. 12x divided by 3x is 4. Put the negative 2 on the outside. Negative 2x divided by negative 2 is x. Negative 8 divided by 2 is 4. You have two matching binomials, which is what you want, so that's one of them. And the other one is made up of this 3x minus 2. So my suggestion would be to continue to practice these. I gave you some problems to try. Some of the problems are going to be like the ones that we just tried, where you have to go through all those steps. Some of them will look more like we did initially, where you would just look for factor pairs of negative 6 that add to negative 5. I tried to, over here on the side, give you some steps just in general. So the first thing you always want to do is see if you can factor out a greatest common factor of all the numbers. So for example, down here, all of these numbers are divisible by 3. So it might just be easier to divide everything by 3 and then factor it like we did with these, because you'll just have an n squared in the front. Other times, you won't be able to pull anything out, like this one over here, and you'll just have to go through the steps. So I would encourage you to try those. This is the last skill that we needed to cover in order to get you to be able to try quadratic expressions, which is most likely the next focus area that you need to work on.